Hi, welcome. Today, the topic of this paper is response to regulation, alcohol retail markets and consumer product choices.
Louder.
Oh, louder. Okay. Yeah, I'll try to be louder. So, and I would like to start with choices. So choices, people make choices with freedom as a sense to express themselves as a way to gain their self-control and autonomy. Louder? Okay, and there's a tendency for consumers, for people to varying their choice behavior. They tend to seek variety in buying things, buying items, buying foods, buying wine, as a way to express themselves and establish agency. And it's defined as a diversity in choices for goods and services. It could be both motivational and instrumental. Could be it's to satisfy the needs for novelty, for stimulation, or it's simply to mitigate the uncertainty in future preferences. And the purpose of this study is to try to understand how people respond to the changing in the environment they live in, to the changing in the resources that they have to exercise. So some studies have found that people use variety-seeking behavior as a way to gain the sense of control when they face constraints, when they are feeling socially excluded or feel economically stuck, and or as a way to restore freedom when they feel physically confined. And so the purpose of the study is to understand from a different perspective when there are more freedom to choose in the shopping environments. For example, the alcohol regulation on retail market in the U.S., how people respond. Would they seek more variety in wine, beer, and spirits purchases? So this graph it describes the policy background for the regulation of alcohol sales in grocery stores. So there are four types. So for example, so wine sales are not allowed in the stores that do not sell beer, and the spirits sales are not allowed in the stores that do not sell wine, beer, or wine and beer. So that means so this policy is determined by the alcohol by volume percentage. So there are four segments. So for example, I think the Utah and Colorado has experienced some change in jurisdictions at a state level. So they do not allow more than 3.2% beer in the grocery stores. And for the second one, for example, New York, they only allow beer sales in the grocery stores. So we are trying to understand that, and for the deregulation, so there's a difference in the regulated states and deregulated states. In the deregulated states, people have more choices to buy alcohol in grocery stores when they do regular shoppings. So there's a convenience of one-stop shopping, and also that reduces their traveling distance to give them more freedom to choose over wider product availabilities. So the hypothesis is that when the alcohol sales are privatized in retail outlets, that will expand the choice set of stores and also increase the consumer exposure to wider alcohol product offerings, which we think it may stimulate variety-seeking behavior. And the data that we use to try to understand or to try to answer this research questions, we use the Nielsen Consumer Panel data set. It's a longitudinal household level purchase data. It has household demographic and geographical information and also household use an in-home scanner to scan the trips, the date of purchase, the products they buy, the price they pay, total spending, and quantities they buy. And so the products here is we use the most disaggregated product level at the UPC code, the Universal Product Code. So it has let's see. So I would drop. Sorry, it doesn't work. So there's a hierarchy of the products. Sorry. there are total about 10 departments. So for example, alcohol is in the alcohol department, and there are 3 groups for alcohol, beer, wine, spirits, and there are multiple different modules that under each beverage type, and the brand, and there are brands and size of the beverage, and the most disaggregated is UPC. So we are using this pretty much disaggregated data to come up with a household level annual diversification index to represent the variety in purchase for wine, beer, and spirits. So this is the relationship between retail regulation, grocery store sales, and the variety in wine purchases. And the original policy segments is 4, but I divide here as a way to represent the policy variable for wine sales. I put it into a dummy variable, so we can see the wine sales are not allowed in the first 2 segments, and the wine sales are allowed in the later 2 segments. And there's a slightly obvious relationship. So in the states that allow wine sales in grocery stores, people tend to seek variety in wine products. But for beer, it's less obvious. And it's also I divide into beer sales allowed and not allowed. For spirits, it's even less obvious. So for the following, I will use empirical method with the data to try to understand whether those relationship will be reflected in the data that we have. So the way I used to characterize the variety in purchases using the diversification index. So the simple count of different UPC consumers buy is just a simple number of different UPC they buy. But the Barry and entropy index, they also include the distribution of how people diversify their purchase or diversify their total spending on different items. The SI means the purchase share out of total bottle purchased for each distinct UPC products. And besides the standard entropy index, I try to come up with a generalized index of diversification that also consider the heterogeneity between products. So the the key property of this generalized entropy index is the last term is when the z is equal to 1, that means the 2 different UPCs share the same property. So for example, 2 different UPCs that might both belong to dry table wine or sweet dessert wine, but they do not belong to the same brands. So that's the heterogeneity part in this generalized index. We hope that this generalized index will better, will more accurately measure the variety in purchase. And the second important part for is omega A. So when the 2 different UPC products share the same attribute, for example, like the same module for white wine or red wine, they are still not the same products. They only share the same attribute bundle. So omega A is used to describe what are the remaining heterogeneity between these 2 UPC products that share the same attributes. So I developed 2 ways of it. So I start with the 2 attribute, generalized entropy index, module brand, and third, I extend this index to the module brand and price. So the price is a price category for each beverage type. I use a distance of 10 to develop this price category. And so I come up with a rule for a total attribute bundle. So we can see that as there are more attributes that possibly come into this index, the calculation, the formula is getting more complicated. For example, if there are 4 attributes that we consider, they will give us total 13 heterogeneity terms in the brown bracket. And I use the empirical method I use is to work with the panel data as the random effects model. The why I didn't use, and because this policy variable remains pretty time invariant over time. So after repeal of Prohibition Act in 1933, the states are granted authority to regulate the production, distribution, and sale of alcohol beverage. So this is the RI I used in the model. So the estimate we try to look at is the beta R. And if we use a fixed effect model, then that will give a theta equals to 1. So that we are not able to estimate the beta R. And this is the statistics for how the data look, how the whole sample that we use. So there are about 45,000 households for wine and beer model, and there are a little bit less for the spirits model. And for the first 4 row, we can I think we can see that the entropy index, standard entropy index, are a little bit larger when the standard entropy index do not consider the heterogeneity within the 2 UPC products. And so the baseline, the baseline results tells I compare the 3 different models that using different variety measure. The first, and I found that the generalized entropy index is if we don't consider the heterogeneity part between 2 UPC products, that might overestimate the deregulation effects or the consumer's variety-seeking response to the deregulatory environment. So the 0.11 means on average, the household purchase variety for wine in the deregulated states is 0.11 higher than the household purchase in the regulated states, and it's highest for wine and lower for spirits. So to test the robustness of the results, I do several sensitivity analysis. This one I compare the 2 attribute generalized entropy index with the 3 attribute generalized index. So what I found is that when I consider the price attributes characterize the variety in purchase, the deregulation effect is smaller. So, and the third column for each model is that I also try to account for the county level liquor store availability. So I include a variable that is number of the liquor stores per 1,000 population in a county, and I found that doesn't influence the deregulation effect or the consumer variety seeking behavior to the deregulatory environments. In this table, I divide the total sample into the household that move across the states that are on the different regulation regime, and another sample include the households that do not move or they move across states but under the same regulatory regime. So these 2 additional analysis also shows that the deregulation effects or how people respond to a more deregulated environment are pretty consistent. It's about 0.11 for wine, 0.1, close to 0.1 for beer. And the spirits, we found that for the households that move across states under different regulatory regime, we do not find a significant results. That's for spirits. And third part is when I account for only the alcohol shopper, only the frequent alcohol shoppers, that means I drop the households who purchase wine, beer, and spirits over a year. That was below 25th percentile of the total sample. That's 2. So that's 2 for wine, beer, and spirits. So when I drop the observations, who goes to grocery stores buy alcohol in 1 year, that was less than 2 trips. That significantly drops the variety-seeking level for wine, beer, and spirits. It's pretty consistent. So that tells us that the variety-seeking behavior for consumers does not come from the households that more frequently shop alcohol. So this deregulation effects affect those people who kind of more randomly buy alcohol over a year. And the last part is when I account for the counties, the spillover effects from the bordering privatized counties. And what I found is that when, for example, when a county that do not allow wine, beer, spirits in the grocery stores, for its bordering counties that do allow, that is in the privatized states or that allow the sales in the grocery stores, that also do not much influence the variety-seeking level in the baseline model. So these 4 sensitivity analysis pretty much tell us tell us the baseline results is pretty robust. So the conclusion is that we think that regulation or deregulation of alcohol sales in grocery store changes the choice set of shopping stores and exposure to products. So in deregulated states, there are more exposure for consumers to see the products, and that might influence how they vary their choice behaviors over time. And so the entropy index, not considering the product heterogeneity or similarity, may overestimate the deregulation effects. The third is this is kind of summary that the variety-seeking behavior is 0.11 higher for the purchase in the deregulated states for wine, 0.092 for beer, 0.041 for spirits, and the findings are consistent when we consider several sensitivity analysis. So more implication is that we think that wider availability due to the increased outlet density increase the convenience of shopping, and it also leaves the constraints on store options. People are more they have more freedom to choose where they are going to buy. They don't have to be constrained to the standalone liquor stores. But we also found that the variety-seeking behavior is most significant among the non-frequent alcohol shoppers that may go to the stores to buy alcohol less than 2 trips in a year. And so the last things we're thinking is that this result also says that in the regulated states, consumers actually do not react to a constraint or limited freedom that they have to buy alcohol. So we find the absence of psychological reactance behavior from our finding. But the reactance evidence is a little bit more obvious, more significant when we consider the frequency of the purchase. So that's, and this, we use the Nelson data. So thank you.